that came from an even less complex creature. And some of these people still believe there's a God. But we are not here to discuss evolution or creation. We are here to look at some things that would show us that the history we were taught is full of holes and lies. But why? I'll tell you why. Because of laws, money, and control. How many of you know about the history of the California gold rush? We've all learned of it, but how many of you know of the details surrounding that gold rush? See, people from all over the country, people from all over the world, flocked to Cali to find this gold. What they don't emphasize is that these were miners, and they would go to California mining through solid rock. And what they found while digging through this rock were remains of humans, like us, and tools, and solid rock that dates back to the Eocene era. Over 50 million years old. This is exactly why sedimentary dating, rock dating, it's a bunch of baloney. And what you need to know is that many years ago, they put into place laws that would ensure the filtering of knowledge and ensure that the independent archaeologist would be shut down and silenced among the professionals. I mean, there are laws that prevent the use of metal detectors in certain areas. Why? It's a metal detector. What's the harm in detecting metal under the surface? Well, it's a big problem for the people who want to hide the truth. So it is therefore an illegal act on private and federal property, with often severe consequences. Why the federal government owns any land in the U.S. is beyond me. Just another thing our ancestors let them get away with. Much of these laws were put in place under the guise of historic preservation. But yet, everywhere there is archaeology, they are constantly refurbishing things, building modern structures onto ancient structures, moving artifacts from this museum to that museum. They cut things open, break things open. Sometimes they blast things open. They pour concrete and other materials down holes so no one goes there. Preservation, my ass. They blame things on grave robbers when the first archaeologists were actually grave robbers, believe it or not. You're probably wondering why in this photo these folks need hazmat suits to open a sarcophagus. And that is actually because of the toxic gases that are released once you open them. But they don't tell us that. Now, the SAA, the Society for American Archaeology, on their website you can see some of the laws surrounding archaeology. For example, laws in the United States on federal and state lands protect archaeological sites. People who violate these laws can be prosecuted. Laws pertaining to private lands distinguish between surface collecting, picking up objects laying on top of the ground, and any ground disturbing activities like digging for artifacts. Laws pertaining to state and federal lands do not distinguish between surface collecting and digging for artifacts. In other words, removing artifacts from state and federal lands is illegal. You know, while we're at it, why don't we take a look at the principles of archaeological ethics, as if they have any. But let's take a quick look at what the ethics of an archaeologist is supposed to be according to these rules. Stewardship. The archaeological record, that is, in situ archaeological material and sites, archaeological collections, records, and reports, is irreplaceable. It is the responsibility of all archaeologists to work for the long-term conservation and protection of the archaeological record by practicing and promoting stewardship of the archaeological record. Stewards are both caretakers of and advocates for the archaeological record for the benefit of all people. As they investigate and interpret the record, They should use the specialized knowledge they gain to promote public understanding and support for its long-term preservation. As you can see here, archaeologists are obligated to keeping up with and promoting the lie. Accountability. See, the accountability part, they really put that on the public. The idea is they don't want people flocking to archaeological sites. So it's the archaeologist's job to keep their non-disclosure agreements that is defined in their permits and licenses. You know, you can't see the maps of archaeological sites unless you are qualified and granted permission by the federal land manager with a license or permit. Did you know that suggesting that there were civilizations that predate the Egyptians, the Sumerians? That's a good way to have your career end as an archaeologist. The suppression in this field of study is real. Let me give you a few examples of what I mean. Archaeologists found a city in Cuban waters, estimating that it's over 6,000 years old, which goes against the archaeological record, so therefore it does not exist. They found a city underwater in Italy, Crete, that could have been Atlantis. But most archaeologists won't even entertain the idea, so that place remains a mystery. You know, back in the 80s, Brazil dumped silt over what was thought to be a Roman ship underwater, and then banned underwater exploration because they didn't want to have to rewrite their history, because they already had a Portuguese navigator as the discoverer of the country. Ain't nobody discovered. Look, when they say some person discovered this land or that land, it's whatever, because you always find someone who was there earlier. Many archaeological finds that don't match accepted history are often suppressed and covered up in this manner. Now, American history is probably one of the most tainted and false histories, such as Columbus. Christopher Colon discovered America, more like he discovered a new market. We actually have a day named after a human trafficker. And in those days, he himself said that girls at the age of 9 or 10 were in high demand. Yeah. How many of you know about the Mayan city found in the Guatemalan jungle? Most people wouldn't know how large it was because it's covered in jungle. They found 60,000 plus ruins, palaces, houses, forts, highways, even elevated highways. A city they believe was home to a few million inhabitants. Omer Goxman is a guy who believes, according to the DNA evidence, that there were humans over 150,000 years ago that were breeding with a ghost species. A few years ago, he concluded that ancient humans had sex with non-humans. He called them a ghost species because he found that the genes, the DNA of sub-Saharan Africans, is much different than everyone else. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Maybe the time has come to where we should audit the findings of these institutions. But maybe we don't have to